Nine experienced hikers, one of the most treacherous mountain passes in the Soviet Union, and a night in February 1959 that nobody has ever been able to explain. They were found dead, some with fractured skulls and broken ribs, injuries that, according to forensic experts, required the force of a car crash. Others were found half-dressed in minus 30-degree temperatures. One woman was missing her tongue. Their tent had been ripped open from the inside. This is the Dyatlov Pass Incident, and after 65 years, we still don't know what killed them. In January 1959, 10 students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute set off on an expedition to reach a Torton mountain in the northern Urals. The trip was graded Category 3, the highest difficulty level in Soviet hiking. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, 23 years old, experienced, meticulous. He had organized multiple expeditions before. These were not reckless amateurs, they were trained. The group of 10 became 9 when one member turned back early due to illness. The remaining 9 pressed forward into the mountains. On the 1st of February, they made camp on the slopes of Kolatsiako, a name that, in the local Mansi language, means dead mountain. That was the last night any of them were seen alive. When the group failed to return on schedule, a search party was dispatched. On February 26th, they found the tent. It was empty, partially buried in snow. But what disturbed the searchers most wasn't the emptiness, it was the cuts. The tent had been slashed open from the inside. Someone or something had caused the 9 hikers to flee into the frozen night without their boots, without their coats, without their equipment, in minus 30-degree temperatures. The first 2 bodies were found at the edge of a nearby forest, 1.5 kilometers from the tent. They were barefoot, dressed only in underwear. The branches of the pine tree above them had been broken, but up to 5 meters high, as if they had climbed it, desperately searching for something in the darkness. 3 more bodies were found between the forest and the tent, in positions that suggested they were trying to return to camp. They never made it. Then came the autopsies, and that is where the case became truly inexplicable. 3 of the 9 had suffered catastrophic internal injuries, fractured skulls, broken ribs on multiple sides. One hiker had chest injuries that, according to the medical examiner, were comparable to those caused by a high-speed car accident. But here is what made investigators stop cold. There was no external trauma, no bruising, no cuts, no signs of a physical struggle on the skin. Whatever had crushed their bones had done so without touching the surface of their bodies. And then there was Lyudmila Dubinina. Her body was found in a small ravine, partially submerged under snow and ice. Her tongue, her eyes, and parts of her lips had been removed. The official report attributed it to decomposition and scavenging animals, but her husband refused to accept that explanation, and many forensic experts since have agreed. The precision of the removal was inconsistent with animal activity. The Soviet government classified the case shortly after the investigation began. The files were sealed for over 30 years. But before they were sealed, investigators had noted several details that were never officially explained. The clothing of some victims tested positive for elevated levels of radioactive contamination. Local Mansi tribespeople reported seeing orange spheres moving across the sky in the direction of Dead Mountain on the night of the incident. And a photographer from a separate hiking group camped several kilometers away had captured images of strange lights in the sky that same night. Those photographs were confiscated by Soviet authorities and never returned. The official conclusion of the Soviet investigation? The hikers had died as a result of, and I quote, an unknown compelling force. That was it. Case closed. File sealed. Decades later, theories continue to multiply. The Russian government reopened the case in 2019 and officially concluded it was a snow avalanche. But investigators and independent experts immediately pointed out the fatal flaw. The slope angle was too shallow for an avalanche, and none of the bodies showed the burial patterns consistent with one. Others have proposed infrasound, low-frequency sound waves generated by wind passing over the mountain, capable of causing extreme panic, hallucinations, and disorientation in humans. It would explain the blind flight from the tent. It would not explain the crushed bones. Military weapons testing in the restricted Soviet airspace above the Urals remains one of the most credible theories. It would explain the radiation, the orange lights, the classified files, and the Soviet government's decision to shut the investigation down so abruptly. 9 trained, experienced, prepared hikers fled their tent in the middle of the night into lethal temperatures. 3 of them suffered internal injuries no human hand could have caused. A government classified the evidence and called it an unknown force. 65 years later, no explanation fully accounts for every detail. Whatever happened on Dead Mountain that February night remains officially unsolved. If you want to go deeper into history's darkest secrets, subscribe to Uncharted Lore. The next case is already waiting.